Thank you all for being here. My name is Alana Ehrenberg. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Design Trust for Public Space.
And Alex Zablocki, the Executive Director of the Public Housing Community Fund. Welcome.
And we're going to get started here in a few moments. I'll let Alex take over introducing and doing the welcome remarks.
Thank you, Alana. Well, good morning, everyone. Today is an exciting day, really years in the making. I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate with us as we achieve this important milestone in our shared commitment to strengthening NYCHA communities across our city. The release today of From Imagine to Activate, quick reference guide that everyone can get when you walk in. It's on the table outside in hard copy. We'll also talk about the website. We have some swag as well. Is more than just a resource. This is a catalyst for change. And at the fund, in partnership with the Design Trust and everyone here in this room today, we are truly excited to release it to the city, to our partners, and get to work with you all to bring much needed investment to NYCHA's open spaces. With the recent news out of Washington that I'm sure we're all aware of, what's happening with funding, this work is more important than ever to bring in philanthropic partners, the nonprofit space, our residents of NYCHA at the forefront, resident leaders, working with the New York City Housing Authority to bring the resources necessary to help transform communities and improve public health and access to open space. At the Public Housing Community Fund, we believe that NYCHA residents deserve access to safe, vibrant, and welcoming open spaces. It's something we've been doing for a few years, and many of you in this room have been doing that as well. And again, we are really excited about today's announcement and release of this toolkit. I first want to give a special thanks to AA for hosting us, the Trust for Public Land for sponsoring today's event, and to all the resident leaders that joined us today. I saw some of you earlier, our friends at Harborview Houses, Harborview Terrace Houses, Sumner Houses, and others. I want to thank you all for joining today, and let's give our resident leaders a round of applause. They do a lot of work as volunteers in our communities, and they are at the forefront of everything we do at the fund. This work would not be possible without our dedicated staff. Of course, I want to recognize them. Claire McIlvain is here today. Thank you, Claire. Nicole Vlado, which we'll get to in a moment, wears two hats. Also, our partners at NYCHA. I want to start with Videhi Modi, Dylan Baker-Rice, Joanne Wu, Joshua Katz, the entire Capital team at NYCHA, the legal team that makes this work possible, and of course, operations led by Eva Trimble. You hear from Eva in a few moments. This work would not be possible without the dedication and true partnership of the New York City Housing Authority. They are leaders. They are bringing in resources to public housing communities. They can't do it alone, and that's why we're here today, to bring more people into the fold to get this work done on behalf of 525,000 residents of public housing across the 5 boroughs. Our Green Space Advisory Connections Advisory Committee, if you could stand, I know many members are here that have helped guide this work over the past now 2 years. We meet every few months. Anyone want to stand? I know some of you are out there. I just wanted to recognize you all. We're here today because you've helped guide us in many directions, and most of this work was guided by your input. And then I also want to thank our major donor and partner, the Helmsley Charitable Trust. You'll hear from Tracy in just a moment. They've invested early in public housing communities. They wanted to ensure that they were not only making a financial commitment, but a commitment to equity, sustainability, and justice, and ensuring that our green spaces are accessible to all New Yorkers, and that we're expanding that opportunity as well. So I want to thank them. And of course, a special thanks to our partners, the Design Trust for Public Space, Matthew, and Alana, who you just heard from. Round of applause. They've spent countless hours on this work and have been champions of doing work like this in the public realm across our city, and this work would not be possible without their support and leadership. And then finally, the toolkit that you've received today, and you'll hear more about in a few moments, would not be possible without the incredible work of 2 fellows, and they're more than that. Blake Roberts and Nicole Vlado Torres spent months, round of applause, countless hours engaging many of you, other stakeholders, designing a plan that was easy to follow, demystifying the process of how to do this work in NYCHA's open spaces. And they've just put their heart and soul into this over the last few days, really wanted to make sure that this guide was perfect, was usable, actionable, and they've done that. And I want to congratulate them again for that. You'll hear from them soon to understand more about how the toolkit can be used by all of you. So we're ready to see this opportunity already scale. I spoke with someone earlier about bringing this idea to other public housing authorities, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. This is a movement, though. We do believe that the future of public housing does require partnership. As long as we center residents first and understand their wants and needs, that will guide us in the right direction for bringing the resources that are much needed after decades of disinvestment from Congress in public housing authorities across the country. We also want to make sure that with this toolkit, residents have the tools, necessary resources, and support they need to shape the future of their communities in partnership with the New York City Housing Authority. So again, make sure you pick up a toolkit. It's on the table when you walked in. We also went live with our website, communityfund.nyc/openspace, so you could download a digital copy as well. This is intended to evolve over time, so we know process will change. So this is version 1. Maybe we'll be back here in a year or two with version 2 or 3. And we look forward to getting to work together. So hopefully we'll get to meet you all, network, and partner on exciting projects within public housing. So with that said, I want to invite up Tracy Parisot from the Helmsley Charitable Trust, our partner in funding Green Space Connections, and also developing things like NYCHA's Connected Communities Guide, and an early supporter of this work on the philanthropic side in order to move these projects forward. Tracy, if you'd like to come up. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I knew I wasn't going to be able to see this on my phone. I increasingly can't, so I'm going to try to be brief. And as Alex said, my name is Tracy Parisot. I'm the program officer for our New York City program at the Helmsley Charitable Trust. And our Green Space New York City program focuses on creating and increasing more healthy, active green space in underserved areas in New York. And so since, as Alex mentioned, since 2018, I think, we have seen the opportunity at NYCHA and been hopeful about it, and we're really inspired by the work of Andrea and Delma, I don't know if she's here today, but and Videhi and others, then with their Connected Communities work, and we were honored to be able to support what they were doing and are very excited to see what Alex and the fund and all of these incredible partners have brought to it, and have been able to keep supporting both the Pamanok pilot, which I think you'll hear about today, and some of the resident committee members are here, I believe, as well, which is exciting to me and probably everyone, and then some of the other projects as well, and there are other philanthropic funders in the space. And I encourage you all to think about, especially these times, how creative you can be with philanthropic partners, to both strategically in terms of what they're focused on, think about what more they can do, we can do, and also to leverage other public funds. There are still public funds, lots of public funds to leverage, and I think you might hear a little bit more about that today too. So we're really excited about this toolkit. It's so fantastic, and hope that it helps more stakeholders and residents do what they hope for at NYCHA. And thank you so much for letting me be here.
Thank you, Tracy. We really appreciate all the support that the Helmsley Charitable Trust has given this project and others amongst. So I would like to welcome up now another project partner, Tamar Renault from the Trust for Public Land, who is the generous event sponsor today.
Good morning. My name is Tamar Renault. I'm with the Trust for Public Land, and I just want to give a shout out to my colleagues, Bianca Clark and Sophie Newhouse, who are in the back, and their work is all about ensuring that all of us have access to a park within a 10-minute walk of our houses. I really want to thank the Design Trust for Public Space, the Public Housing Community Fund, NYCHA, the Center for Justice Innovation, and the Helmsley Charitable Trust. It has been a week, and it is really great to be able to come to an event like this to see how action perseveres in spite of everything. For those of us who don't know the Trust for Public Land yet, we're a national nonprofit, And since the 1970s, we've worked with partners to connect everyone to the benefits and joys of the outdoors. We do this by protecting land, by making schoolyards and trails. We work in close partnership with local communities, and in doing so have brought access to the outdoors to over 9 million people across the country and created over $1 billion in new funding for parks and public spaces. We know that in cities that are as crowded as ours are, the outdoors and nature are essential to our physical and mental health. Just remember those COVID days, how much we used our parks and public spaces. In New York, you may have seen some very colorful playgrounds. Those are ones that used to look like parking lots, and now they are storm-absorbing, flood-proofing, shade-producing, colorful, vibrant places for kids to play. And I think one of the things that is most exciting to me about those schoolyards is that the kids design them. And so in this very same way that this NYCHA toolkit talks about the communities being part of the design and activation of open spaces, so too at the Trust for Public Health, wherever it is that I work, public land, that we really work on community involvement. We've got 2 iconic projects that I just want to tell you about. The Queensway, which is a partially elevated High Line in Queens. It's 3 times as long as the Manhattan High Line. And the Long Island Greenway, which is a project, a biking, walking project all the way from Manhattan to Montauk. We still have a lot of work to do. We've made a lot of progress. Did you know that 1 in 3 Americans do not have access to a green space within a 10-minute walk of their homes? So we're trying to find a way to close that gap. That is our priority. So we're partnering through Bianca and Sophie's work with public housing authorities across the country. And really working with residents and neighbors to reimagine what those green spaces could look like and how they can be used. So we're really excited to learn with all of you and to share some of our work with the Design Trust. So for now, thanks for doing this and for your work, and really looking forward. Turning back to you, Alana.
So now I'd like to welcome up our biggest partner, NYCHA, and so I would love, Eva, if you want to join us here.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm Eva Trimble. I'm NYCHA's Chief Operating Officer. It's an honor to welcome you as we officially launch the Imagine to Activate Toolkit as a resource designed to help improve open spaces within NYCHA's community. As we all know, green spaces are so much more than just a park area. They are vital to the physical and mental well-being of our residents. They are places where families connect, children play, and communities come together, and more so needed now than ever before. Revitalizing these spaces requires all of us working together, and the toolkit is a direct result of the collaboration between NYCHA, our incredible partners at the Design Trust for Public Space, the Public Housing Community Fund, and most importantly, NYCHA residents and leaders. I just want to say to you that it's no secret that NYCHA has a lot of problems maintaining our buildings, our homes for our residents, and it's just so heartwarming to see all of this effort and interest in our open space, because frankly, without this community and these partners coming together to do this work, it would not get done. This is truly filling a gap for us that we have no way to do ourselves. And so there's just so much gratefulness that we have for this program, for Alex and the team and everyone working together, because our open spaces do get left behind in our work to kind of keep up with the day-to-day repairs in resident apartments. And it's so important, as I said, especially now with everything going on, to have this focus on our open space, to making it available, accessible, and beautiful for our residents to kind of heal and work together to build community. So I just so grateful for this effort and for all of you coming out today to see this work through to activation, which will be really exciting. I guess fundraising is in there somewhere too, but we'll get there. So thank you so much. I'm really excited to continue building this partnership. Operations and NYCHA are here to assist, help, provide any type of resources we can to get this work done. And so I want to introduce next our Deputy Chief Asset and Capital Management Officer, Dylan Baker-Rice. He's in the Capital Department, much more connected to this work than I am, and he's going to speak as well. So thank you so much.
Great. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Eva. And thank you to Alex and everyone that's here. It's really an exciting moment for us. We've been working in partnership for quite a while now, so this is a fruitful event to see this culminate and come together. As you may know, NYCHA is really a city within a city. So we have more than 177,000 apartments spread across the 5 boroughs. So roughly 1 in 15 New Yorkers is living in public housing. So it makes up a substantial population, and most people know what public housing is. They recognize our brick buildings, they recognize the tall buildings are spread out around the city. What most people don't know is the extent of our open space. So we are the second largest landowner and manager of public open spaces, or open spaces for residents in our case, after the Parks Department. So we have more than 2,400 acres of open space. It's extensive. And that's really one of the assets that makes public housing unique, because these open spaces are often located in areas without access to parks or other amenities. So they're really a critical component to make public housing what it is, and for residents to get access to recreation, air, light, places to play, places to meet, places to congregate, whether it's children or seniors. Much of the challenge with the open spaces is that they were constructed for a different community. They were constructed, or most of our developments were built 50 to 80 years ago. So over that period of time, through disinvestment in public housing, there are aggregate needs in terms of upgrading our open spaces. So with our open spaces, the community has really shifted in the sense that some developments, we have residents that are aging in place, so those developments skew older. Other developments, we have new, younger families that are moving in. So we have much more children there. So these open spaces need to adapt to the different uses and the different demographics that we have within NYCHA. Many of the open spaces have older equipment. So the equipment needs to be replaced, or the equipment needs to be upgraded. Again, it needs to be shifted for different uses. And these are all challenges that we look at. We also need the open spaces to be more adaptable. So we talked a little bit, or you heard a little bit about some of the projects that have happened. So not only when we think about open spaces are we thinking about upgrades that are needed to playground spaces, we need new basketball courts, we need handball, soccer, pickleball. In other cases, we need new playground equipment, new climbing equipment, we need exercise equipment for older adults, but we also need these open spaces to do more than just simply be an area for recreation and an area to relax in. We have increasing needs in terms of adaptation to climate change. So many of the projects that we look at and that we work on take into account kind of dual uses or dual purposes of our open space. So not only do we want to increase access and improve what's on the ground for residents, but we also want to adapt to the needs, the changing needs of our climate. So that means in many cases, that we need to put in landscaping that's adaptive. We need to put in bioswales. We need to put in amenities subsurface that can deal with stormwater, that can deal with heavy rains, that can sequester the water and make sure that both the residents that live within NYCHA are safe and then the surrounding community is safe. So in that way, we're also thinking about how do we make not only our residents and our developments more resilient, but the broader community more resilient for a future. Planting is also a big need. You know, we need to think about plantings that are robust, that are easy to maintain. We need to think about plantings that work for our climate. So they need to be heat resistant. They need to work with native animals that live within our grounds, pollinators, but they also need to be robust. We're also thinking about gardens. We need garden spaces for residents. Many cases, we want residents to be able to utilize the spaces, and they should have choices in terms of what they're planning and what they're maintaining, and that increases overall use and activation of our open spaces. So in short, we need spaces that are adaptable. And as I say all these things, these things all cost money. And that's the challenge that we're looking at. So we really need the help of partners. And we need the help of partners like the Public Housing Community Fund and the Design Trust for Public Space to change these spaces, to help activate these spaces. Every year, NYCHA conducts a physical needs assessment. So, sorry, every 3 years we conduct a physical needs assessment. So we look comprehensively at our buildings and grounds, and based on that, we estimate what the needs are to fully upgrade everything. So our current cost is an eye-watering $78 billion. That's if we were to make everything up to a state of good repair and fix everything, which obviously is not possible for us as an agency with the lack of funding and resources. Now, of that $78 billion, roughly $2 billion is the cost to upgrade all of our open space. So of that 2,400 acres, we have many capital projects. We're very focused in working with other partners on upgrading that space, but it's also a substantial sum, and so that's why we need partners. Most of the open space work that we do is really funded through discretionary funds. So it makes up a large portion of our capital budget each year, but it's given to us by local elected officials. So local elected officials, whether city council, borough president, other partners are giving us discretionary funds, so some amount of funds to upgrade the open space, but that still leaves a very large deficit. So this is where the toolkit comes in. The Public Housing Community Fund and Design Trust put together this document which outlines how partners such as community-based organizations and not-for-profits will work with resident groups. And it really helps to develop a vision for upgrades at a particular development. And that's where we're excited, where the expertise of local community-based organizations or other partners are matched with the fund where they can help with visioning, scoping, connecting residents, and ultimately work with NYCHA in the reimagining of open space. So there's an extensive existing network of partners within New York, and we're excited to partner with them to upgrade our open spaces. In short, we see this as NYCHA as a welcome step towards new partnerships to expand our capacity to meet our capital needs. And in these uncertain times, it's an opportunity for public housing residents to shape their public space and an opportunity for the community to come together and to drive change. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for this partnership, for this toolkit, and thank you to Eva for kind words and for all the work that takes place with our talented groundskeepers and property managers to keep the playground space and open spaces open. And then to our side, Asset and Capital Management, Josh Katz, Videhi Modi, Joanne Wu, and our former alumni that's going to speak later, Delma Palma, strategic partnerships, and of course, thank you to the residents that have worked with this and the resident leaders that contributed to this. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Dylan and Eva. I'd now like to bring up our wonderful fellows who have put their heart and soul, as Alex mentioned earlier, into this toolkit for the past year, just about. They've been deep diving into all of the things that go into a successful project. So I'd like to welcome up Nicole Vlado and Blake Roberts.
And we're going to share the mics, so that's very Blake and Nicole, right? Hi, everyone. We're gonna try to, we're here to really show you what the toolkit is and how it works, but we certainly want to make sure that we're keeping it fun. So this may feel quick, and there's lots of opportunity for questions and answers. I'm Nicole Vlado Torres. I'm an architect and an affordable housing advocate who is currently the Director of Capital Programs at the Public Housing Community Fund, and I am the Green Space Connections Planning and Policy Fellow.
And my name is Blake Roberts. I'm the Communications and Design Fellow with the Green Space Connections Project. I'm a graphic designer, urban strategist, urban researcher, if you will, and I feel compelled to just say thank you so much to Nicole for this past 12 months.
Thank you,
it's been an incredible
Blake.
project.
And I will say, although Blake and I share different titles in our fellowship, the work has been truly collaborative. And so I want to thank you for being such a wonderful partner for each step. I wrote that in my notes. I think you saw them. All right, so let's see. All right, here we are. So last March, we joined the Design Trust as fellows to develop this toolkit, which was intended to be a simple resource to be used by resident leaders, nonprofits, and philanthropic organizations to encourage and support new private-public open space projects at NYCHA. And I'm preaching to the choir here. Like, you all know why we do this work, but just to remind ourselves and to sort of reiterate some of the notes that have been shared with us this morning, we want to improve the health and happiness of residents at NYCHA, and in turn improve the health and happiness of New Yorkers and beyond. So, that's why we do this. We also have, as Dylan mentioned, 2,400 acres of open space at NYCHA. It's a really unique condition for New York City. That's over the 335 campuses. We have 1 in 17 New Yorkers living in NYCHA. And we understand the majority, perhaps close to 80% of the open space is currently underused. So let's improve it. All right, so as we got more familiar with Green Space Connections during our fellowship, we had the opportunity to learn from many generous individuals and teams who shared their time with us. The second to last page of the toolkit includes acknowledgements, and if we have not included you, please come to us afterwards. We will correct our mistake. We realized our task was to create an invitation. That's why we have this text in blue, right? We're not recreating existing resources. They're already incredible resources. NYCHA's Connected Communities Guidelines, the Open Space Master Plan, Safe Places and Active Spaces, just to name a few. And so we didn't want to sort of create a step 1 to 100 of how this work gets done. We really wanted to simplify and create an excitement and curiosity around what it would mean to do these projects, both for NYCHA residents and for prospective partners, all of them. So early in the process, we envisioned the invitation to be playful, and a deck of cards became one of sort of the anchor points for our design focus. And we really have developed this as a deck of cards. You've got the little kits. And it's around the 5 steps, right? We tried to sort of synthesize all of the information that we understood these processes take and really break them down into 5 steps that allow you to understand like critical milestones for how you get from start to finish on these projects. We're going to go over these in detail, but first, Blake, you get to talk to us about your beautiful design.
Yes, so just a little bit of breakdown of what our thinking was behind how the resource is designed. Each page follows a similar hierarchy to establish familiarity with the process, where to get information. We start with a brief summary of what the step is. It's the call to action. It's, where are we? What are we doing with this step? And then we shortly follow up with those little thought bubbles that act as prompts, moments for you to reflect, to truly engage with your open space, be critical, and start in this step, if you will, imagining what could be improved. At the bottom of each card, we include a step-by-step checklist. These are kind of like the must-have bullet points that you need to tick off in order to move on to the next step. And on the backs of cards is where we provide a little bit more robust information. So it's context, it's a little bit more granular. As Nicole mentioned, the Connected Communities Guidebook and the Open Space Master Plan, as well as Safe Places, Active Spaces, we're linking out to the incredibly robust library of resources that already exists in this space for improving open spaces at NYCHA. And in the process of, interviewing project partners, residents, community groups, et cetera, we've learned that we need to simplify. So that's why it's 5 steps. We tried to make this concise, easy to digest. And we also learned that we needed to manage expectations. So we included a little bit of a timeline at the bottom of each card so you can see where you are in the process and hopefully build excitement and anticipation as you move through the 5 steps.
I forgot to say what they are. Can you tell us what the 5 steps are?
Yes, step 1 is imagine. Step 2 is partner. Step 3 is design. Step 4 is build. And step 5 is activate, which we will review right now. So with Imagine, it's truly an opportunity for you to sky's the limit. Think about, how can I improve my open space? What would I like to see here? How are our community members, our neighbors, our friends using our spaces, and how could they be using their spaces? So this is an opportunity for us to ask one another, what can be done? This is not a time for limits. It's a time for truly imagination. And this is kind of the introduction to the process. So we're citing the Connected Communities Guidebook and other resources, as we've mentioned, to inform people of the principles and the guidelines that already exist. So you have this really, really, in-depth understanding of the process as you move through it.
Great. And so you've planted the seed for an idea, and the next step is partner. And so if we imagine as a call to residents, it's a call to partners as well, but this second step, partner, is truly the moment where partners really get to step in and offer the range of services that they can. And we really don't imagine this as a limitation. We're not looking for someone who can take projects from start to finish in full. We're really thinking about building teams. So if you are an organization or an individual or a philanthropic group, you have the chance to think about what is it that you can bring to the table. And this is the matchmaking moment. We thought maybe we would make a dating app. That could happen in the future. In the meantime, the Community Fund will help bring residents and partners together. And we'll get the chance during our panel in a little bit to talk about why we partner. I think you already have a sense, but this is really the moment where we get to express the significance of that. And one of the main things is really to liaise and support NYCHA residents in establishing a relationship with NYCHA, securing funds for projects, and obtaining site agreements, which really allow these projects to begin, if we think about this as an important technical moment.
So step 3 is design, and I think every person who's stood at this podium this morning has mentioned the absolute necessity of centering the community perspective in this process as the primary focus. It is absolutely the linchpin of all 5 steps. So it's an opportunity for partners and residents to work together to prioritize resident need and the resident imagination in the open space improvements. This is a really robust, fruitful step where you're leading workshops and having conversations and drawing and post-it notes and pipe cleaners, and it can be fun and it can be interactive and iterative, and we encourage people to be flexible because the process is responsive and malleable in and of itself. And I think this is a nice time for partners to, flex their expertise in this process and make sure budgets and timelines are managed and are updated accordingly, again, so expectations are managed on the entire scope of the project.
Yeah, that's a theme, is expectation management. And for any architects in the room or anyone who's been involved in anything like a renovation, you know that when you get to this stage build, it is one of the most exciting moments, and it's also can be very challenging because, again, you have to manage your expectation. You can see the finish line, but sometimes it starts to move with you away. But you get it done. So, that's part of what we try to communicate in this step. We also think about, again, you continue to expand your team and bring on the partners and work with NYCHA to get approvals so that you can have the insurance so that you can do the work on these sites. You're communicating with your neighbors. You're ensuring that they're aware that we say, pardon our appearance, it's going to get a little messy and noisy, but that will pass, and the reward is worth it. So we really encourage, at many steps along the way, and most importantly during the build phase, to celebrate your achievements. Have a groundbreaking ceremony, have a ribbon cutting, have parties in between. Anyway, have a good time. And as you're seeing, on the back of the deck, for each of these phases, the timeline is growing. And we give some examples in this around the wide range that a build could take, right? The mural that you're painting may be weeks or months to achieve, maybe shorter than that, right? Whereas, a construction project is going to take a number of months. So really just being able to think about scale.
And the last step, potentially the most exciting, if not imagine, is activate. And this is a call to everyone involved in the project, residents, partners, to celebrate the open space improvement that has just taken place. It's an opportunity to build endowments, to maintain the open space stewardship, a la Friends of Highline, that kind of model. And it's also an opportunity to celebrate and use the space in perpetuity. So thinking about, what is this going to look like in 10 years? What is it going to look like in 20 years? How are our communities still using it, or how have the needs evolved, and can the space adapt to meet those needs? So activation is a step that never ends. It's a celebration of the hard work that went into making this improvement, and it's also a moment of pride for having accomplished it and taking care of it and maintaining that relationship with open space over time.
Yeah, and again, as Blake mentioned, this could be step one for someone. This could be a moment when residents decide, okay, I want to be involved. This project's complete. I want to, encourage it to be active and maintained over time. This was an opportunity for new partners to join and say, I want to help fund this endowment. I want to provide programming on site. I want to provide, services for maintenance. And so again, we see this as an expansive and exciting moment. And I will say, as you can see in your deck, in addition to the 5 steps, we have testimonials from NYCHA resident leaders. We had a lot of really wonderful meetings along this way, really generous time spent with members of the advisory committee, with NYCHA residents, with NYCHA staff, amongst others. But we couldn't have developed this without their feedback and input. And we wanted to sort of celebrate their accomplishments and their excitement about this work, because again, they're going to start this with step 1. There's also 5 case studies, one for each borough, which each sort of represent a different program type for a project, a different duration of time, and a different sort of scale of cost. So hopefully that can help people prepare, groups prepare for how these projects may need to be managed. And then we've also have a final checklist at the end that captures, these mini checklists for each step. So you have this sort of at-a-glance representation of start to finish for a project. And there's a web resource, which was also mentioned earlier. It's a work in progress, but it's live. Alex gave us the plug for this. It's also on the toolkit, along with an email dedicated to this project as well. So we'd love to hear from you. We'd love for you to interact with that web version of the toolkit, request more information from us. And yeah, we have each of the 5 steps, as you may have seen earlier, on boards, which are right behind this wall. And we also were very excited to have a few boards representing a really wonderful exhibit that's on view currently at FX Collaborative and will soon move to LaGuardia Community College, which is Living in the Shade. I know we had Matthias here earlier. If he's still here, thank you so much. It's a really wonderful historical project that captures past, present, and future for open space at NYCHA, and it couldn't be a better time for us to bring these 2 resources and projects together. So thank you.
Okay, everyone. If you could come back to your seats. And we'll have time to network right after the panel, if everyone can come back to their seats. What do we all think so far? Are we excited? Yes? So I want to introduce Nicole again to moderate today's panel. We have some special guests to discuss not only the toolkit, but their experience in investing in and transforming open spaces in NYCHA. So Nicole?
Thanks, Alex. And for the sake of time, I would just like to invite the panelists to come up and grab a seat. And I will introduce us when we're seated. So excited to have this conversation. Again, we've got, come on up. Tanya, Layman, Dalma, Tamik, please join me. You don't have to go in any order. No, not at all. That's just the alphabetical order. Fantastic. So you guys can hear me? This mic is working? All right, wonderful. All right, so 5 steps, 5 seats. It's a little bit about how this goes. Again, we talked about the village that it takes to make these projects possible, and I'm very excited to be in conversation with these 4 panelists this morning, each of whom, like many in this room, have been involved in open space improvements at NYCHA. So I guess I'll just go in this order, and I'm going to do a very abbreviated bio. So when we have expanding into talking, feel free to fill in any blanks that I may have missed. So we've got Layman Lee, who is the Senior Director of Neighborhood Safety Initiatives at the Center for Justice Innovation. And that is the team who is leading the green space, 4 active green space connections projects that we have at Castle Hill, Marlborough, Patterson, and Roosevelt Houses. We've got Dalma Palma, who is the Vice President of Design and Construction at Empire State Development, and is the former Deputy Director of Design Services at NYCHA, a member of the Green Space Connections Advisory Committee, and basically wrote the book that we know as Connected Communities. Tanya Gale, Executive Director of Green City Force, and also a member of the Green Space Connections Advisory Committee. And a very important guest, Tamik Williams, the Vice President of the Resident Association at Paumanok Houses, and he's also been our photographer today. All right, so we don't have a lot of time. And actually, Blake, will you advance the slide for me? I didn't bring the clicker over, thanks. So I'll ask you sort of individually and in pairs to talk a little bit about each of these steps. And so I won't have each of you talk about all of them, but I think each of you represent aspects of these projects. And again, feel free to talk more about who you are and what you do to the audience. So we'll start with Imagine, and this is really the critical first step. So I'm going to say, Tamik, can you talk a little bit about the importance of inviting residents to reimagine their open spaces and what your experience has been at Paumanok with the transformation of the ball court?
So, good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
There we go. Much better, much better. Well, first I want to say that not green spaces, but open spaces are incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important. In the neighborhood, there are people who know each other. There are more people who don't know each other. There are people who only see each other in passing. And the spaces that we've been able to partner with and create have brought not only our community together, but people from other communities into our community to enjoy the spaces. One of those spaces, which is the space that we're pretty much talking about today, is the basketball court. We probably can't show a picture of how it used to look. Originally, because I'm from the neighborhood, so when I was growing up, it was just blacktop or asphalt, and there was a rim. The rim didn't have a net. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the rim didn't have a net, and it was just one. We can't play full court games like that. So after that, it became a site for a construction team when they were redoing the windows in the neighborhood. And then after that, we were blessed to be able to put a basketball court in that same space. This space, I don't want to use the word abused in a bad way, but this space is used and abused every day, all day. Like the kids are playing there. They should be in school, but they're on the basketball court, you know what I'm saying? There are times where like 2 o'clock in the morning, the kids are out there on the basketball courts playing still. Sometimes they play with the light on and sometimes they play with the light off, so.
These are good problems to have. So
Yeah.
you're talking about a radical transformation.
Yeah, definitely.
And the case study for the Pominock ball courts is in the guidebook. Were you involved at all in the sort of design process?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, so I was designing in the design process. I think we did most of that during the pandemic. I took quite a few Zoom calls while away. But yeah, I mean, the design process, in my opinion, it was fairly easy. Once we decided like the look we wanted to go for, the colors, like adding things like gates and garbage cans and things like that. Like it was an incredibly easy process.
Oh, that's what I want to hear. Incredibly easy process.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was incredibly easy. Yeah.
Perfect. And I didn't ask him to say that. So, Delma, I want you to pick up where Tamika's leaving off, because Pominock was a really important project for you while you were at NYCHA. And as with Connected Communities, and these projects are linked. So perhaps, again, this is what I would say, like, one of the starting places of how we get here. Can you talk a little bit about your role in creating Connected Communities, and perhaps talk from the perspective of NYCHA? We've heard this from other voices today, but why are these projects important?
Sure. I'm so glad to hear you thought it was incredibly easy, because I thought the opposite. So just to introduce myself, I came to NYCHA in 2018 to start this program of looking at the urban design of the open spaces. In a time when that was not something really NYCHA was much focused on, because as we all know, NYCHA has significant needs. And so it started by, I had to start by navigating this large bureaucracy and figuring out how we could start to partner, or start to think about partnering. And Layman's Group was one of those first groups. And Pominock and Tamika, your mom, was one of the first resident partners that we worked with as well. But it really was, I do think, a concerted effort of building relationships, and also being persistent in laying the groundwork, whether that was legal, or I'm an architect and planner, so whether reviewing the capital design and the process, how it went through NYCHA's review process, all of those kind of behind the scene things were being figured out over a series of years. And hopefully now laid the groundwork for things like this to move quicker and smoother, and to have a lot of lessons learned. And what I think is so fantastic about seeing this is that, like, we're moving from a place where we had all the knowledge internally of how to accomplish this, to a place where we're sharing that knowledge, and essentially empowering everybody to, in a way, be an architect and designer of the space. But the reason that they are so important, I think, is what Tamika said. These are the places where people are thriving, are living. These are the backyards and front yards. This is where you welcome people to your home, where you host the birthday parties and the quinceañeras, and like all of these special moments where people can be civically engaged, I think, is something crucial that we need right now in this moment. And so transforming them, listening to people and how they want them to be designed, but also redesigning them to have co-benefits, like Dylan was saying, of mitigating the heat that we're going to see increasingly, or the stormwater flooding. So these things can do a lot. They're powerful places, so that's why they're important.
That's perfect. Thank you. If we think about our next step partner, I would love both Tanya and Layman to share thoughts around why your organizations do this work, and why you continue to deepen your commitment to NYCHA residents, and perhaps even if you have advice for prospective partners, and whoever wants to hop in first.
Okay. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. I'm also a NYCHA graduate employee. And so that's kind of the beginning of my answer, right? I started working at NYCHA in 2012, and the first farm was built while I was there, and then Hurricane Sandy wiped it out, and we had to build it again. And it it started because there were partners in Red Hook who had an interest, and community members in Red Hook who had an interest in better food access. And there were enough people locally at the time it was Added Value, which was a farm down the street, and the resident leadership of Red Hook West and NYCHA wanting to work with us as a workforce training program. So Green City Force is working with young people who are NYCHA adults, young adults, and we're training them in service to build skills for green jobs. And so that was the beginning of it. Really, the experience is like when you are giving people the tools to empower their communities in ways that work for them, that's a pretty powerful thing. And it's fun when we get it right. And it's exciting to see the young people who start out as community members and then become core members and then become graduates and then go off and do their own thing or come back and work with us and become leaders and role models for the next folks who want to come through or who are the messengers to make sure that the resident leaders are getting what they need when we're messing up and we have to fix it. And we built this relationship that is about celebrating the talent and magic of these communities. And that's really what our job is, like to do that, to showcase the power that is in community, especially in NYCHA.
I love that. So you said fun. I heard fun, which is really exciting to hear. I think there's also this thing about sort of deepening a groove. So you get to, if you're new to this project type and you get through the 5 steps, why not do them again, right? Yeah. Layman, do you want to talk a little bit about why you partner?
Hello. Why do we partner? So the Center
You partner a lot.
We partner a lot, and the Center for Justice Innovation is like a 25, really 30-year-old organization that has been around, starting in New York City, working to improve the justice system and to just make it more humane, really work for people. And as an organization, we learned a long time ago that a lot of the work is important. Like a lot of the work is within court reform, but also starts with people, right? It's the upstream work, and so we work with in the communities where these issues affect people the most. And in New York City, that really means public housing. There's like it's a whole city within a city. Over, was it 600,000 people, maybe 700, 800, maybe not on the books. So that's a lot of people who are deeply affected and are in need. And so our team in particular, Neighborhood Safety Initiatives, is very unique. Where folks who are from these communities or deeply connected to the communities. And it's important for our team to really work with residents. I know my speaking point is to build, but the design portion, the working with residents to co-create what safety and well-being means for them is a really important part. I think the building part is important, but working with people to meaningfully create the change, be a part of voicing why it matters and how it can look like, and all the things, what it can do for them, is an important part of the building, right? Because it creates meaning, it gives people pride in where they live. Folks have been waiting for a really long time for change to happen, and we need billions of dollars. So these partnerships are really important for like the hope and like celebrating the wins we need to keep this work going. And yeah, and I think for us, it's, this is the life's work, right? And I just want to shout out the team back there. And it's a unique team of like residents and social workers and designers, and it's all part of just making sure that this core, just like deeply affordable housing stock is there, like and well maintained, and for very many generations.
I just want to add one thing that I think is kind of unique to Layman's organization, because you just talked about your team, which is, that's not like a usual group, like social workers, designers, right? Like don't often get to work together. And so I think one thing that is amazing about these types of projects is that you are translating a real need, like potentially a societal need or just a community need, or just a programmatic need, into like the process of getting it built. which requires different technical expertise. And that is not often folks that come together in the same space. And so I think that's pretty cool.
No, and hold on, keep that mic, because you're up next. You're one of the designers in this room. I would love for you to talk a little bit, and we've started to touch on this, the power of design, and in particular, resident-led design. We've got Runit in the house, Grain Collective, a critical partner who does resident-led design. It's not the traditional model. We may be working that way, but what does it offer us when we shift sort of the power dynamic and really let residents lead design process? Why do we do it?
Yeah, so I think what you'll hear probably from most of the designers who do community-led design is that the people are, the experts of their lived experience, so they're the best at telling you what they need. And in a way, our jobs as architects and planners is to translate what they need into what that should look like physically. It's not like inputting our opinion into what you need. So whether you're saying, I need a space for my teenage girl to hang out, there are different things spatially that you can change to make spaces more accessible. Like I was reading about, basketball courts, they were painting them pink to make them more accessible to teenage girls. Like things like that you don't, really realize the power of design to either welcome or not welcome a person into a space. And so I think that's what the role of a designer is really this translator.
No, and I love that. And again, the residents will tell you what they need. And as we've learned, the resident demographics vary from campus to campus, but also NYCHA's getting older, right? So not everyone needs a playground. This is the moment through these conversations where you can learn that
and people often age groups, and sometimes not, but oftentimes age groups want to be together, but maybe not intermixed in the same space. And so being thoughtful about how you design things adjacent while giving everybody their own space. Like all of those things are just nuances of design.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. Build, we touched upon a little bit. Lehman, you got to talk about partner, and I think that was really important. You're also doing, your group has taken on what I think is a fairly significant undertaking to manage the construction of 4 projects simultaneously. This is really satisfying, or I think it's really satisfying. You see the project come to life. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned, and maybe we can just talk specifically about what's going on at Castle Hill right now?
Awesome. We learned a lot, and I will say, I just really want to thank both NYCHA, Public Housing Community Fund, the partners Grain. It takes a team to make this work seem easy, and thank you for saying that it's easy. I think that's hindsight's 2020. When you're in it, you're like, when can I see that basketball court? But the interesting thing about the change that we want to see is that we want to change policy, but it's often the people with the foresight who want to make things work to really create spaces for unique projects like this to happen. And so we know construction can take a really long time. It's New York City. You see scaffolding all the time. It comes up on your street. It's there for 5-10 years. And when we started talking to Alex about this work, I think it was a very ambitious timeline of 2 years. And like you said earlier, you kind of see the goal and the timeline moves with you. But the building part, I think there are very many steps to the building part that is important, right? You mentioned earlier, and I don't know if you want me to talk about this, the technical part of the building part is very important. The Center for Justice Innovation as a partner has this license agreement with NYCHA to be able to work on, thank you Delma and Vadehi for figuring that out, to work on very unique projects. And so as a partner, it's important for us to have that license agreement to be able to do that work, assume the liability, and also manage all the moving pieces to realizing a project that may sound as simple as a dog park. Identifying partners like Grain, over there, who is a wonderful designer who knows how to create vibrant, beautiful open space projects for the community, but knows how to culturally work with people in the community, right? It's not just like an architect with an ego who's going to be like, that's my design. Like identifying partners who know how to work with community. Like as a construction manager, that's what we're kind of identifying, people who know how to work together in these unique spaces to realize something beautiful. And with the dog park, if I can talk about the design portion a little bit.
Go for it.
We had a process that was maybe a little bit more unique in that our team hires organizers who work in communities, and then they then put together a stakeholder team of residents, age groups of intergenerational stakeholder team to then work with the organizer to lead the process. They then began meeting to dream up all the things that can happen in this open space, and then they also, we empowered them with idea cards to go out into the community to collect ideas around what they wanted to see there, and that's how we then came up with the dog park. We didn't say, hey, you guys need a dog park, there are sanitation issues. Actually, NYCHA residents have been saying for very many decades, we have dogs, we would love to have a dog park. And it just so happened after very many meetings and with Grain, we now have a beautiful design of a dog park that takes into all the consideration spaces for big dogs and small dogs, and to play, water, seating, shade from trees that will be planted, additional seating adjacent to the dog park so people can watch the dogs play, and then also snuck in a barbecue area that was really much needed. And the dog park signifies a lot, right, for the community. It's a space for people to come together. When our dogs meet, we become more social. So it's an opportunity to kind of break down barriers. If you live in these tall high-rises, sometimes you can be siloed, and it's an opportunity to meet your neighbors. That's the dog park, and I think at this point we're at 75% completion.
We're going to be able to be there later this year for sure. Yeah. When the weather warms up, and it's going to be so fun. And we're just living in a dog's world is the lesson here. Yeah. I know that we could, again, be here for much longer. Everyone has so much to contribute. I want to just talk a little bit about Activate. And again, Tamik, you touched on this immediately, sort of letting us know how much the ball court is being used. If there's anything else you want to share with us around, what effort does that take, or even recognizing there's some upcoming projects in the pipeline for other open spaces, thoughts around, do you think it's a challenge to keep these spaces active? And what does it take, from the resident side? What support do you need to keep them functional and vibrant?
So the spaces are always going to be used. They're always going to be used no matter what, in my opinion. In terms of projects that we have coming up, I believe we have a splash pad coming up. And the splash pad is cool. I mean, sometimes I think of it from a place where I can, thankfully afford to go to a water park or something similar. You know what I'm saying? I can get up and just go to the beach when I feel like it. I have neighbors who can't, so I think that it's important to bring these things that the neighborhood would not have access to otherwise. And so the splash pad is great. We put up we did a barbecue area during the pandemic as well. And with the barbecue area in the summer, they are on that thing every day, all day, no matter what. And it's like sometimes as the resident association, we need the space. And the residents are like, no, the space is for us. We need the space, But all in all, it's cool. We, in Pominock especially, we do as much as we can to engage our residents and to have, our outside partners come in, and not so much outside, right? Because we're all NYCHA at the end of the day. But yeah, it's really nice to have these partnerships and get people to come outside and actually be engaged. Otherwise, these people don't care for each other. This is, again, I'm sorry to say it, but this is why these spaces are so important, because otherwise these people would not interact with each other whatsoever.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And if we have a moment, I mean, again, this is so critical, and I love that. No, I'm going to move on to Tanya, but thank you, Tamik.
I actually
Yes,
have one more
please,
thing.
Please.
In terms of keeping the spaces clean,
Yes.
yeah, my bad.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that was the
Let's
part.
talk about maintenance, the hidden step.
Yeah, maintenance. Sometimes it's a little bit tough, I won't lie. And it's really just because, the residents, I mean, that's what it is, right? Like the barbecue area, for instance, they'll go up there, they'll have their barbecues, aluminum foil's right there, garbage bag is right there, the balloons are in the grass. It sucks because we need the caretakers to then take care of that stuff. And then the caretakers feel like this is so much work. These people aren't cleaning up after themselves. So as long as we can keep the spaces clean, well, the spaces will always be active no matter what. But if we can keep the spaces clean, that would be ideal.
Right. So thinking about perhaps making maintenance and cleanup fun. So, Tanya, you mentioned you built a farm, hurricane took it away, you rebuild it. You're not doing projects that have an end. You're doing projects that continue, which also means you have a long-term commitment that you're making in real time with NYCHA residents. So thinking about, again, this is the long view. Can you expand a little bit about what that looks like, what that sort of benefit to NYCHA is, benefit to individuals on your team? I'd love to talk more about that.
Sure. Well, longevity is challenging, but it is the North Star, right? So you heard earlier folks in Capitol talking about the design and physical needs assessments that happen at NYCHA. So whenever we're partnering with the community to have a potential site, there's a whole long engagement that starts before we even really spend time with the residents, because the last thing we want to do is present something that we can't commit to as an opportunity. So we start with what is possible, NYCHA, in these spaces that we're interested in, that we think there's appetite in the community. What can you tell us about this space and its intended uses? So can you confirm that it would be available for 5 years, or it's not expected a year from now to be turned into something else? So that's part of the conversation. So there's a whole checklist of screens that go through, and then we have the conversations with the community, and then we start to think about, okay, what is the vision? So we have a workforce that are core members, and so we maintain the spaces, so it's not on the caretakers. We work very strongly with property management and the resident leaders to make sure that we're planning collectively, but part of the longevity is we're showing a commitment to actually maintaining the spaces, which is a part of it. Like anything, funding is real, right? So sometimes there's funding happening. There are conversions happening now in NYCHA with some packed spaces, and so community members have a chance to decide, is this still what they want to be doing? While other communities are very interested in having us move to their communities, but we have to wait and see what the funding opportunities are. So it's a whole combination of things, but can I just say really briefly on partnership? On Staten Island, we have a site at Mariners Harbor, and the collective partnerships there between the residents, the resident leader, the property management, the local community chef, the programming that happens in partnership with us is huge, and we do all kinds of sort of foundational programming. We have a harvest festival in the fall. We bring pumpkins to the pumpkin patch where they don't have to go upstate to get a pumpkin for their kids. We do all kinds of programming, but then in response during the pandemic, the Staten Island residents said they wanted books. We don't usually do books, but Staten Island wanted books. So for a year plus and ongoing, we now bring books as part of the programming on Staten Island, and we don't do it in another site because that's not what was asked for. So we might offer it, but then in another site, they might have an interest in something completely different. And so the longevity is tied to being authentic about, like, do folks want you there? And if they do want you there, what does that look like and what does that take? And then beyond that, it's not like a fixed exactly like this for the rest of it's iterative. It's going to evolve and change and transition as the community does and as the resources do. So
That's a perfect metaphor, and I think we'll end there. I know that there's more, but I'm being told that we're on time, or we can take questions. So perhaps also questions can be amongst the panelists. depending on how our audience is doing on this round of questions. So please, again, we have incredible individuals up here who have so much experience and knowledge to share. Please ask questions.
Hi, I'm Heather McKinstry from Datner Architects. So I'm an architect, but I'm really curious about the partnerships aspect of this. Who are the partners? Are you partnering with local, like schools, churches, community groups, like people who are in the neighborhood? And then how does that affect kind of the porosity of these spaces? Like, are you welcoming non-NYCHA residents into the open spaces? How is that? I mean, I don't know if there's friction around that.
Everyone has access to mics.
I'm glad you asked that question, because the answer for us is it depends on the community. So our foundational offering is, these are the resources that we historically have. We do food distribution and weekly farm stands. In some communities, it is all about anyone within like a line of sight that wants to be involved, come on in. In other communities, it's been made very clear to us from years ago, this is for NYCHA residents. And part of your job is to keep it that way. So despite our intention of like being interested in a certain region, if the community members are actually not up for that, we're necessarily gonna pivot to meet the priorities of the NYCHA residents. So for us, it's conditional. It depends on what the community's asking for or talking about as a priority.
And to speak a bit to the partners, just I think a little bit more broadly, the partners that NYCHA has worked with, because there have been quite a few. NYCHA's partnered with Parks Department to do, open public spaces, and for the Parks Department, it is a requirement, obviously, that it be open as public parks, but even that, the nuance and design changes. So there was one we did in the Bronx where it was clear due to security reasons that it needed to be gated and shut at certain hours, and so Parks was respectful of that, because every development is different. And schools is hopefully a partnership that could happen. Trust for Public Land was another partner, but there was East New York Restoration as well. So there are community-based groups, there are citywide agencies, and different types of nonprofit groups that can partner. So.
Yeah, and the partner slide, or card, step 2, describes, just a quick list of all the potential partners, and they describe members of teams that have been involved in case studies. So architects can partner, landscape architects can partner, contractors can partner, design facilitators.
Can I just add, as a designer, architect, maybe like the first step is, like you said, deep listening, and like hearing from the community what the needs are, and then also asking maybe the residents or whoever is in your stakeholder meeting what partnerships already exist, right? Because you have community leaders that have been doing this for a long time before we got there, and even after where funding dries up and we leave, they will still be doing it. And so they've been crafty with figuring out existing partnerships with other CBOs, small businesses across the street, your local, if we're talking NYCHA, it's like, you have your tenant association, you want to make sure you're working with your maintenance, your local schools, PTAs, everyone. But, I think before being like, okay, here are the issues and we can bring all of these partners, there's also like, okay, how can we work with community with what they've already built and then go from there?
I agree with what everyone said.
Yeah, it's asset mapping, basically. It's like you want to understand what's already in community, and you may find in a build situation where there are necessary resources like a designer or construction that may or may not be in the community, but maybe there are people in the community who are carpenters and can be part of the build. And so, part of it is like what types of partners are tied to what steps of the process, right? So you might have a planning partner in the Imagine Design section, but then you might have a community partner in the activation, whether that's farm-based learning or cooking partnerships, or so it is really like a mapping of all the different needs, and then again, starting with what's already in community as assets, and then build from there.
My question was, what area would you say you would need in terms of your projects or your community? Would it be a specialist that you're kind of desiring right now in terms of something in the pipeline? Would it be more of a funding of a larger scale, more local community activists? So really just asking each panelist if they could just describe some area specifically that you need for your projects in the pipeline.
So you're saying needs that you'd like to see met?
Funding.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think a few of us are going to agree that funding is the most important.
I think money helps. Money definitely helps.
You know, like without
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I mean, like everything else involved is great, but if we don't have money for these projects, we can't do anything.
And funding can support all of the phases, right? So I think, and it can dictate what the partnership looks like. So if you have public sector money, if you have money from elected officials, it looks different than a foundation, which looks different than something else. So I think that can drive requirements, which can drive what the project kind of looks like too.
We are an AmeriCorps program, which means a significant line of our funding to support the young people to be trained to work is on the chopping block right now. And so if that funding goes away, that radically changes the design of what's possible. So as an example, and then again, if you have electeds or locals, there's different types of engagement from a resource partner, depending on what it is. It's always funding. Because you can't do anything, you can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't actually implement it.
But I think, again, for that imagine phase, you can imagine things that perhaps are less costly or move faster, right? Like I think in terms of project type, there's a lot of room to say perhaps the dollar is not the thing that constrains us entirely, right? You can have ways to have your big dream, see what the funding opportunity is, and then again, adapt and scale as needed. I think again, we don't want to say that there's a barrier for entry and it's this many dollars, right? I think that there's opportunity to be creative.
Maybe this is where I can actually answer your build question.
Answer the build question.
And maybe this is partnerships, but also there's a need for not just incredible designers like Grain's in the room, by the way, give them all the money, great with working with community, but also, just part of our job is to identify potential vendors, go to bid, get the insurances, and figure out how to kind of manage a project in a way that with the money that we have and with Public Housing Community Fund, it's very gracious, $500,000 dedicated money for a built environment project in 4 developments. And it sounds like a lot, but it's also for all the architects in the room, that $500,000 right now in our post-COVID economy with everything that's going on with insurances and tariffs, and prevailing wages, all the things, it becomes less and less. And so as a builder and a project partner, it's up to us to be creative about how we stretch all of these things. These fun design constraints can actually make for a lot more. And sometimes you get something really unique, like the dog park with also a giant green open lawn that will hopefully be well maintained so that people can sit and be comfortable putting their feet in the grass. But it's also, maybe a list of vendors who are appropriately priced for working within NYCHA communities. That would be a great ask.
I would say, just to add to what I said earlier, that is all true. At the same time, you need to have an aspiring big idea to attract folks. So, you have to you start with the big idea, and from there, you figure out what it takes. And if you have to adjust or have a first stage and a mid stage, but you got to kind of go big or go home, right? So you should be intentional about a vision that is dynamic and holistic, because that's what we all do, as much as we're also all the time trying to get it funded. So I would start with the big idea and then just see how you need to either keep it up or adjust. Because at the end of the day, you want to do quality things. You want to do the right things that make the most sense, and that is the goal. So I call it the 80-20 rule, right? When you find that 20% that are the right 20% that are going to make that happen and come to life, then that's the win. The work is figuring out how to get the 80 to come along with you.
And I just want to add, yeah, because we're talking about partnerships, and partnerships are important, especially, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring it back to funding. With funding, because for our barbecue area specifically, we actually had this issue. I don't remember what the original numbers were, but I do know that like once the pandemic came, we were like $200,000 short. And we had to figure out where to get it. And, thankfully our city council member, made it happen for us. But, that's why it's important. Imagine like if we didn't have that relationship with him, I have no idea if the project would have happened or when it would have happened.
But to Tanya's
yeah.
point, the project idea was compelling enough. It wasn't just an ask, right?
Right.
It was an engagement.
Right.
Can I?
I just want to add something to your, because you were talking about contractors, and this is a little bit nerdy, but like a good contractor that does small projects is like really amazing. And I think it's a unicorn. It's something we should hopefully try to foster more in New York City, like these small contractors that have the capacity to do small projects, but kind of in a complex environment. And if we can make it easier for them, that would be great.
I do want to acknowledge like the long timeline that it takes, like when it becomes like you have your vision, you have your construction set, you go out to bid, and you're like, oh my God, it's like $200,000 more. And you have to go back to the community, and you're like, okay, our vision is this big. By fall, the vision that we can realize is this big. The wonderful thing about the partners, and I think also identifying partners who have long-term commitments to these communities are important, and working with residents and working with partners that continue to do activations are really important, because then it signifies to community that it's not just like a one-time thing. And when there's a stall, you can use activation to celebrate the wins, so that it's not just, okay, you have a meeting, it's going to take very many years to realize something, and then people leave. No, people don't leave. We're not going to leave. We're really here to stay. We're all New Yorkers. But also, we need to, instead of a newsletter, your activation will convey to the community the commitment that this is a long-term partnership. We're not just dating anymore, we're married. And there are very many steps to this, right? And so we're going to see the barbecue area, and then the basketball court, and now the splash pad, and it's taking very many years, but it's gonna be worth it. And with residents and with these activations, that's how we can communicate that, that to the community.
I think we end there. Is that right, timing-wise? I think that was beautiful. Thank you all so much.
I want to do a quick thanks. Everyone who's spoken, thank you today. I could do a whole presentation of thank you, but to the fund, to Helmsley, and to TPL for sponsoring, thank you all so much for being here. I also want to recognize our two fellows, Nicole and Blake. I think they should do a podcast. We have fellows on all of our projects, and the relationships are always unique, and we are so grateful to Nicole and Blake for their passion and dedication to this. Also, thank you to, if you're Design Trust staff or board, I see some of you here, raise your hands. Thank you all for all that you do. And I especially want to thank Alana, who has kept on. She is keeping on, and I can't tell you how important it is for her to have her leadership on this. Design Trust's mission is to unlock the potential of New York's open spaces. But when we talk about open spaces, what we're really talking about is people, and how people should be the author of New York's future. And I think there's no better representation of what that means than this conversation, and that New Yorkers should be the author of our future, and NYCHA residents should be the author of their future. Public and open and civic spaces are a powerful way to do that, and we're really grateful to be part of that conversation. 9 years ago, we had an open call for projects. An incredible New York advocate named Jane Greengold submitted a project to us to opening the edge at the Lillian Walled houses in the Lower East Side, and that has taken us on a 9-year journey with people in this room and many others, working with NYCHA, working with the fund, and working with many partners to do this work. So I just want to recognize that, that moment. and recognize that actually this is a pretty powerful group of people in this room right now. And I look out and I see people I know and some new faces, and each one of us has a role in this work, in this space and other spaces, and I'm really grateful to be, that Design Trust is part of that conversation. And we are going to be keeping on as well. We want to be continuing to promote this work, so we're excited that on February 11th, the toolkit will be all over New York City on Link NYC's near NYCHA campuses, so check it out, take a photo, and send it to us. We're also thinking about this work nationwide and working with TPL to bring public housing authorities from all over the country to have a national conversation about what it means to do this work, to be in conversation with NYCHA and other housing authorities in this important moment when we need to have leadership like you all, and you will all be invited in that room to be the authors of our future. So again, we're really grateful for having you all here today. Thank you all. You all deserve some kinds of thanks. I wish I could thank all of you individually. But that's all. Please enjoy the conversation with networking. There might be a few pastries left, but great to have you all. Thank you.